The American system of government, in its current iteration at least, relies on a system of checks and balances to prevent any one branch from abusing their powers. But one unofficial check on power involves the media. A strong independent media will be necessary to fend off the worst impulses of the incoming Trump administration, but they are already looking for ways to hamper accurate reporting. Here is Don Jr. talking about what the administration is thinking about doing. Take a look.
As your father is assembling his team, as maybe Karoline Leavitt is looking at the new press briefing room chart, maybe it's time to reorder that chart and maybe take away some people's seats.
So we're going to break some news here because I literally had this conversation. We had the conversation about opening up the press room to a lot of these independent journalists. Like, why should, if the New York Times has lied, they've been adverse to everything, they're functioning as the marketing arm of the Democrat Party. Like, why not open it up to people who have larger viewerships, stronger followings? Like, it's not like the New York, I mean, how much money are they losing a year? The Washington Post, lost 70 to 45 to $70 million. Doesn't seem like they're a great success. So just because they've been there longer, it's like the way Congress functions. Like, you get a committee, not because you know anything about banking, but because you've been there longer. And it's like, doesn't seem like a great way to do things.
One could also argue that just because you have a lot of followers doesn't mean that you're good at something, right? A lot of people hate follow or just like follow people for the schadenfreudedness of it all, or because people say the things that they want to hear them say. So I don't think that's a great metric. But also, TYT is independent. Maybe we'll be granted a spot in the Trump press room. I doubt it, though. And in a Truth Social post yesterday, Trump had this to say about the failing New York Times. He said, I hate reading his post, but it says, will the failing New York Times apologize to its readers for getting years of Trump coverage so wrong? They write such phony junk, knowing full well how incorrect it is, only meaning to demean. Maggot Hagerman, a third-rate writer and fourth-rate intellect, writes story after story, always terrible, and yet I almost never speak to her. They do no fact-checking because facts don't matter to them. I don't believe I've had a legitimately good story in the New York Times for years, and yet I won in record fashion the most consequential presidential election in decades. Where is the apology? Oh, God. So the New York Times isn't very nice to Trump. The mainstream media, apart from Fox News, doesn't seem to like him very much. Where can a guy like Trump turn to when he needs a friend? Well, during the campaign, Trump 78 courted young male voters by engaging with YouTubers and bro podcasters. Trump sat down with podcasters like the Nelk Boys and Theo Vaughn. He also went on Logan Paul's Impulsive podcast, gifting him a t-shirt featuring his Fulton County, Georgia mugshot. Trump also met with influencer Aiden Ross in August. And towards the end of the campaign, he appeared on Rogan's podcast, where he reached an audience of nearly 40 million people. Sharon, does this bode well for the incoming Trump administration? The fact that he's trying to put people in place who report things that are only complimentary to him and probably will only report the things that he wants reported, that's not freedom of press, is it?
Well, no, but it'll probably work out great for him because he's been up to it for a very long time. Listen, he's full of lies and disinformation and Don Jr. and his issues and whatever else. But none of this would have been allowed to happen. Would have been much more difficult if the mainstream media, in quotes, were more inclusive. And I mean thought inclusive, not just, the traditional diversity ways. Donald Trump had a point when he uttered the phrase fake news. Now, not for what he's referring to. And by the way, he speaks to Maggie Haberman all the time. He's probably forgotten it. Okay, she's had many exclusives where she's quoted him directly, on the record. But at the end of the day, there is this enclave, this buttoned up faction of the mainstream media that doesn't allow for other thoughts and freedoms. And I think that that's a big mistake, because if you don't open more windows and doors, then it's just going to make room for somebody else who's already inside the bubble to create this. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to have others included. Of course, we know not the way Donald Trump is doing it. He's not going to have TYT in the room. He should. But, it's a problem that was created by these media dynasties and these corporate, consolidation and people like, dare I say, the billionaire who interfered with the Washington Post, Bezos, and saying no, we're not going to endorse, we're not going to do this. They have their thumb on the scale, and it'd be great if they could open it up to other people. Not the kind of people he's referring to, but then again, maybe I'm wrong. I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah, just because
Everybody
we
gets
don't like
a
them
shot.
doesn't necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting discussion because part of it, at least for us here, we're independent, but we rely a lot on some of these mainstream outlets too for our news. But
Mhm.
it is complicated because they're not perfect and they do a lot of things that I know a lot of us wish that they would do differently. We wish that they would present stories in a more nuanced or balanced way. I know personally, when I can't speak for everybody on this network, but I know for me personally, a lot of times whenever I cover a story, I do try to at least say, okay, well, people on the other side, this is how they're interpreting it. This is how they feel about that, because it matters, right? We can't just sit here and be like, oh, they're dumb and they don't know what they're talking about. This is why they feel a certain way. And I think without having that kind of understanding, we're never going to get anywhere that is a place where we want to be. So
Members make a difference here at TYT. You help make the show happen, and we see you in the chat with your loyalty badge. Click the join button to become a member today.